At Dave Cooper Live, we connect the industry leaders in the architectural, engineering, and construction space with the people, the products, and the processes to help them build it better. Welcome, everybody, to Dave Cooper Live. What if I told you that the future of framing isn't made of wood? That there's a material that's lighter, stronger, fire-resistant, and in many cases, cheaper. Today, we're flipping the script on traditional construction and diving into the steel revolution. On the front lines of that shift, David Chiles, Industrialized Construction Manager at ClarkDietrich, helping builders make the leap from wood to steel, championing sustainability and performance on job sites across the country. David is here to break down the why and the how of steel frame construction. So whether you're a developer, architect, or contractor looking for better margins, safer builds, or just curious about the changing landscape of construction, you're going to want to stick around. You're about to find out why more building professionals are making the switch and never looking back. But before we hop into all of that, we need to give a shout out to our good friends at Cobalt Creed. They are helping builders, developers, prefab home builders, and manufacturers achieve top-tier comfort and superior indoor air quality and low energy costs. Their expertise revolves around small duct, high-velocity central heating and cooling systems. They are the perfect fit for factory installations thanks to its compact design and efficiency. And I will tell you, they have their own federal code. You want to check them out at cobaltcreed.com. And how about a few words from these sponsors as well? CombiLift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. A big thank you to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift for helping us all to build it better. Visit them at combilift.com. Ready to scale up your offsite construction business? Introducing 4A Constructs, your solution to finding skilled labor for offsite manufacturing. Say goodbye to the headache of recruiting a skilled workforce with hand-selected certified tradesmen that are expertly trained and managed for offsite manufacturing, set crews, and finished crews, ensuring maximum productivity and safety. Unlock the future of skilled workforce development for all of your offsite construction needs. Visit them at 4aconstructs.com. All right, again, a big thank you to all of our supporting members, to include all of the supporting members you see going across the ticker below. This is how we keep bringing you all the valuable information you need to know about the industry that we love so much. This is keeping us honest, it's keeping us true and unfiltered, just for everybody out there, just like today's show. So if you'd like to see your name on bottom of this ticker and have our support and you supporting us, that's a win-win, and we love it. All right, let's hop into it without further ado and bring our good friend on, David Chiles. David, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Dude, I am doing fantastic. We're going to learn why steel is better than wood today. I cannot wait to get into this. This is a hot topic. This is one that's going to throw bullets whiz in every direction, depending on who you're talking to. But we are seeing a huge growth in the steel industry right now. And there's a lot of new technology being put into steel. But David, before we get into that, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this very moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or I'm going to have your kids on this show, and I guarantee they're going to spill the beans on you, especially after your recent ski trip.
Yes, they will definitely spill the beans on everything that we have going on in our lives. I'm born and raised Texan, grew up in South Texas, McAllen, Texas, to be exact. That's right there on the southern tip border of Texas. I live in Dallas, Texas now. Been in the construction industry, I hate to admit it, for right at 20 years now, and time creeps up on you. Started working as a drywall framer. Worked at a sales distribution yard selling the products that we employ every day in the construction industry, and then ended up working at a manufacturer. When I've been at this manufacturer ever since, I love working for it, and I love being focused and centralized on a specific product niche of the industry.
All right. Before we get into the industry, in this conversation, I really want to understand what is the difference, or the misconceptions is probably the better word, between what people think about building with wood versus steel, because there is a big switch towards the steel, like I mentioned earlier, but there's still a lot of misconception out there, just like there is with offsite construction.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think that wood is is inherently cheaper, and in some cases, in the past, it has been. And steel and wood are both commodity items. They both ebb and flow in their pricing depending on what the world economy is doing, and so there is this inherent misconception that steel is just more expensive. And really, it's a difference of that majority of time, it's not always a stick for stick product right out the gate, right? Like, in fact, in 2021, one of the biggest, every building material out there was having material crunches, lead time, availability, all these things. And I used to get calls from home builders all the time. It's like, hey, I have this 200 home development. I want to build it all out of steel now. Which stud do I use? And if you know anything about steel framing, the answer is always, it depends, because a wood stud, a 2x4 is highly over-engineered for its intended purpose, right? And that's a good thing. It covers a lot of bases. Steel framing is a little bit more dialed into the fact that what's your actual application. An interior wall stud isn't going to be supporting the same load as an exterior wall stud. So we size those to get the most uniform use of material, right? You're saving, it's more economical, it's more sustainable. And we build the product to the exact length that you need. So everything we print or roll form, or whatever you prefer to call it, we roll form it to the size that you need. You're not going to buy like you would do with wood, where you would buy, a standard 20-foot length and then cut it to the pieces that you need or to the sizes that you need.
So in other words, I don't need a 30-yard dumpster just to take off the 30% of waste I keep throwing in it by every cut that I make, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, absolutely. Where we really shine is or at least where steel framing shines, is that we incur the majority of the waste in the plant, which is to where it should be. It should be incurred at the facility. And every bit of the waste that we do incur in-house, that all gets turned back into to the life cycle of that product again, because we recycle everything that we use.
Well, and here's the thing: a lot of wood framers don't understand the differences just from an installation standpoint. And I'll give you an example, right? Because time is money. Mm-hmm. How many wood framers out there, and if you're listening, I want to know this: how many wood framers out there have actually calculated how much time is spent per job per year on one of your framers sitting there flipping wood, trying to find the right crown? Just that one little simple thing. You don't have to find a crown with steel, do you?
No. In fact, one of the examples I used to give a lot when I was on the continuing education route in the architectural engineering community was that how many times, if you're a DIYer, let's pretend like none of us are in construction for a second, you're just a DIYer, and you go to a Home Depot or Lowe's on a weekend. what do you typically see a handful of people doing in the lumber section? They're culling through material, trying to find the straightest piece,
That's
the
right.
best use of, of their dollars for the material that they need for their project. You don't experience that with steel framing. It's, we manufacture everything to an AST, to specific ASTM standards, and those things have to be matched. There's still tolerances there, but we don't experience that kind of stuff, and we don't think that a framer should have to experience that and incur that in the field either.
Yeah, I'm heading to Home Depot after this with my camera. You're absolutely right. That is such a great visual, because
Right.
how many times I have stood there and did the same thing where I'm flipping through, trying to find the straightest piece of lumber that I can possibly find. So, all right, we already know there's time value in using steel construction. It definitely speeds up the time. And I'll give you another example of that for just people that are out there that may not that understand offsite or volumetric. Steel frame volumetric picks from the top. They don't run straps underneath and have to put it in sideways, because they are building with such accuracy. So there's time savings across the industry, whether you're a site framer or you're a volumetric or a panel builder, whatever the case is. Sustainability is a big topic right now. And this is something that you kind of alluded to, right? We're looking at less waste on a job site. But a lot of people will look at wood construction from a sustainability standpoint, from an environmental standpoint. Why don't you touch on some of the misconceptions there? Because we already see the sustainability side with less waste, but how far does that go?
Yeah, so steel framing, I have talked about this a number of times with anyone who will give me an ear. So if you catch me at a trade show, I might wear you out with this. But steel framing is infinitely recyclable. Okay, it's the majority of material that we run in most of our plants hovers between 34 and 40% recycled content. The lead standards for MR 4.1 and 4.2, I believe, are like 27.2%, and that's a mix of pre and post consumer recyclability. But that's all stuff that we account for. Steel framing, we don't experience downcycling typically like wood does. Okay, you take wood and it is recycled back into pallets, and then that's recycled back into mulch or even to paper or something like that. It experiences a downgrade in the quality of the material to where it can only be used X amount of times. We've done some studies and looked at some things, and there's some other organizations that have looked at this kind of stats. If you were to build a typical 2,000 square foot home out of wood, it'd be about 1 acre of deforestation, and if you were to do that same house, a 2,000 square foot home out of steel framing, you're talking roughly 4 to 5 recycled automobiles. That's something that is worth mentioning, right? The life cycle of something being turned into something else again and again and again. Yeah.
And how long does steel last versus wood?
I mean, I couldn't even really put a number on it. It's really interesting. I always say that it's some of the things we say, it's one of the few products out there that embrace the core tenets of sustainability, which is recycle, reuse, repurpose, those kind of things. And, we had a study done, or a study that I had read once, about just the galvanization, the protective coating that goes over steel framing. And the majority of scientists just end the paper with saying, well, it could be 100 years, it could be 1,000 years, because it hasn't been around long enough to really test the full lifetime, life cycle of it. So it's kind of interesting approach to look at that,
And, I've said it on the show before, when we were in Switzerland, went to a modular company called Bauma, and their CEO, I think, said it best. The most sustainable building is the one you don't have to build again. Right?
Facts.
I mean, and it's as simple as that. So the better it's built, the longer it lasts, the better it is for, the environment and everybody else there in between. All right, here's the top one for you, David. I'm a wood framer, right? One of the biggest in the Midwest. I just said that because we had the biggest framer on recently. And, and I Chris Toggy, and I want to switch to steel. Mm-hmm. How hard is it to switch to steel? Not from a costing perspective, not from an admin and ordering perspective, but I need to get my people, time is money, heads on beds is key. What am I going to see there as far as a headache as, or no headache of switching from my current process to a steel process?
Well, I think that's a great question. I've heard that a lot of times, and there's a couple of different ways to answer that, because I feel like, when you if you're a builder or framer, you have more than just, there's a ton of internal stakeholders in your organization that decision will affect everybody equally, right? From the engineering and design standpoint, there's software that aids in utilizing the generic profile shapes and things like that can be implemented into your design and account for the engineering loads, things like that have to be taken into consideration. For the framer, specifically like the boots in the field guy, it's going to be different. You're going to go from you swinging a hammer and using a pneumatic nail gun to doing everything with a screw gun and screws, and having to possibly, sometimes there is still in-field manipulation that has to occur of frame members. So they're going to be using a chop saw rather than using a circ saw or a worm drive saw. So, there's definitely some things that are different about it, but I think that it's just, everything has an inherent learning curve to using it. And so it's how are you going to, embrace that really? And I think that, one of the things that's interesting to our industry specifically is we draw a lot of people who are tactile learners. If they can see it be done, then they can do it, or they can be confident in it. I always say that you could take a small group of just about anybody and make them a very confident wood framer within a matter of a day or two. And with steel framing, it's just a little bit different. The math changes a little bit, and things are a little bit more informed in terms of maintaining spacing, the loads that you're going to account for. How do I build this rough opening? All of those kind of things. But it's still very achievable and easy to learn.
I mean, you're looking at blueprints one way or the other, right? And you're looking at the design and weight loads and what you have to do. I would add to it that there's a big cost savings with getting the job done as well, right? So there may be a learning curve up front just because you're switching material, but you have less waste, which means less dumpsters on site. You have framing that can happen so much quicker, whether it's panelized or volumetric or site framed. My guess is there's also reduced insurance risks with all this as well.
Yes, that is one of the key savings that I think is the least talked about and sometimes the hardest to realize. We looked at a project with a company in Denver. It was a multifamily project, $74 million, completely designed out of wood framing. The annual insurance for that project was hovering around $471,000 a year. We took a stab at converting this thing over to steel framing, got the project conceptualized and done all into steel framing. The insurance after that was going to hover around $70,000 annually for that same project. Nothing changed. It was just the only thing that really changed was the building material that they were using. Rather than wood framing, they went everything to light gauge steel framing, and they were able to reap a substantial benefit and savings in the insurance cost for that project alone.
Yeah, for sure. What's the lead time on projects if you're a steel framer? One of the things we talked about earlier was, hey, we could go to Home Depot and buy wood.
Right. Yeah. Right? We actually sell our steel framing products in the majority of big box lumber stores as well. It's not the full catalog of products because we offer a bunch of different things, but it would be enough to get you started on things. But yeah, we typically sell through, we have a network of commercial distributors. The majority, I have a plant here in Dallas, my hometown, and we run probably a 2 to 3 day lead time. So you turn the order in on Monday, you're probably taking delivery of that material on Wednesday or Thursday of the same week.
And I don't even have my permit yet, let alone my material, right? So, okay, got it.
We got time. We can work it in.
Yeah. No, understood. Yeah. By the time you get your permits and you start site construction, you turn in your stuff to the steel producers or fabricators. So with that said, how hard is it for me to take an existing project, and turn it into, a cold form steel project, whether it's site, panelized, volumetric? Is there a difference in how you look at this project?
Well, back in the day, and I think there's still plenty of offices, sometimes back in the day is still even, a relevant term to today, is that you probably still have some guys that are doing it by hand. But with the aid of technology nowadays and some of the algorithms that you can run in different software and design softwares, we're able to convert projects pretty fast. In fact, I'll give you a nuts to bolts example. We had a Marriott property that we were looking at in a large metropolitan area, 5 stories over a 1-level podium, all designed out of wood. We got that project at the plans turned over to us at 12:30 in the afternoon, and by 5 o'clock that afternoon, we had converted the entire project over to cold form steel framing. And so we entered into a different set of negotiations and conversations with Marriott. And those are the kind of things that people, I think, really want to know. Is this going to take me a week to do? Is this going to take me, a month? How do we do that? And the heavy lifting of that was done within a matter of hours.
Right. Walk me through all the services that ClarkDietrich offers, to somebody out there that's looking to use cold form steel.
Yeah, we actually had the benefit of having one of the largest cold form steel framing centric engineering departments in the country. We have, I think, right around 70 engineers on staff. That's split across a couple of different markets. So we're in just about every time zone. And their whole focus is cold form steel framing, right? And then, like I said, we have the ability to do the full engineering, get you stamped, shop drawings. We provide, touching back a little bit on the sustainability piece. Every bit of the steel framing that we have, the marking identification that goes into that, we provide mill certs. If you want to know exactly what the recycled content of that was and what mill it was pulled from within the United States, that's readily identifiable information based off any bit of material that you asked or work with us about.
So when you say mill certs, what would I need that information for?
Anything lead related. If you're building any kind of project, and there's some other different standards. Like in Dallas, I think there's green building.
Right.
That's a local one. But any of those standards that are requiring you to provide some type of sustainability report, an EPD or an HPD, or something specific about the material that you're using, you want to know that the product that you are going to employ in your building was harvested or manufactured sustainably. You also want to know that I can be around this product for an extended period of time and there won't be any kind of detrimental health effects, right?
Right. Offsite construction is a big thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
ClarkDietrich, I'm sorry, just making the product itself, like the steel, cold form steel? Are you guys also a panel shop? How much do you guys produce and how far do you go?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think some people, especially when this side of the industry, when they're interested in offsite or prefab construction, they're looking for someone to kind of bring you the whole package. We're one of the few manufacturers that makes products all the way from the building envelope all the way to the interior finish out, right? We make every product in between that, the framing, all of it. Mm-hmm. We do not assemble right now. What we noticed and why we stepped into to investigating further in making sure that we're present and willing to adapt to this side of trends and changes and practices that are happening within the industry stemmed from a lot of our core customers, the end user of our products. We saw them start to employ prefab and panelized construction within their daily practices, and they were able to reap benefits of predominantly greater, control over the whole process, right? They were able to counter position themselves. If I'm a contractor and I'm going after the same job as 10 other contractors, and I have the one ability to say, here's my project, and I can do it in 4 months faster than everybody else, that's going to get an eyebrow raised and a callback. They want to know, how are you doing this? And the majority of people that I've met, it all started with employing this ability to kind of prefab or assemble some of the parts of the job in-house and then employ that, or install that in a little bit faster setting.
So if I'm a panelized manufacturer or builder, I should say, right? Maybe not a mm-hmm. manufacturer. You can actually provide me all of my product to spec per my job. I can still panelize in my shop, get it the way it needs to be. So you can take a offsite approach of my mm-hmm. specifications and provide me the kit of parts that I need to build that in my shop.
Absolutely. Kit of parts is one mm-hmm. of the things we've been continually trying to innovate and be better at. We see that that's what the industry is, really trying to get towards. I read an article not too long ago, and I think everyone's heard or read something recently about the practice of backfilling your role, the amount of people, unskilled labor that we have within the industry. I read something that for every 7 guys that retire from the field, we're only hiring about 1 to replace them. The amount of, wisdom that's lost in those shoes not being filled at the same rate, that's something that every manufacturer is going to have to account for, right? Succession is real. And how do you do that? Well, luckily we have technology that's had led to better informed building designs and things like that. And because of that, that helps us get everybody all the way downstream be aligned earlier about what do I actually need to complete and build this project. And I think kit of parts is one of the coolest inventions and terms that we've heard in the last couple of years. You know, it's the IKEA of the construction industry. And I love that, you know, like anyone can build it. I could build it without a tape measure. That's where we're going to, building by numbers.
I mean, I'm going through your website now and I'm just looking at the kit of parts that you have in here. I mean, it's impressive from
there's a lot
angles,
there.
straps. I mean, you guys are doing everything from plates, straps, posts, and caps, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're really kind of a one-stop, you know, shop for the kit of parts for whatever your framing needs are when it comes to cold form steel manufacturing.
Yes, we're trying to be there. And, you know, I think we're just like any other manufacturer who's identifying what's happening in the industry. There's a lot of, you know, there was a lot of early adopters and innovators. And I think if you're familiar with the book, Crossing the Chasm, I think that's something that the construction industry is constantly doing, right? It's the old, you know, smartphone versus the flip phone, right? There's always going to be laggards that are there, and that's okay. We're trying to make this something that it's digestible for everyone and that everyone can be a part of. And
look at you, you're even doing wood framing connectors. So you're not completely eliminating the wood space.
You know, there's always the misconception that because I work for a steel framing manufacturer that we dislike wood, and that is not the case. I love wood. Okay, there's nothing wrong with it, but I want to build more things out of steel.
Sure. How are you seeing in recent years the direction from people going from wood to steel? Are you seeing a big push towards steel more so than you have in the past?
Yeah, I actually think that the advent and availability of brands like FrameCAD and Howick and Architect who have put what I refer to as a niche roll former. It's kind of like having a giant 3D printer. Gives the ability to print and make studs the same way we would, just at a different volume, right? You know, our machines are volumetric. We might have in one plant have 20 plus roll formers all running different products. And our goal is to run as many steel studs as efficiently as possible. And, you know, the advent of these niche roll forming brands that exist, I think it's really cool. You're giving the average user the ability to play all the way from design to the actual like finished component. And that's something that is just, I think, inherently unique to our industry. And I think that that's probably the thing that's going to bridge that that labor gap that we were talking about. Because when you make things like that very intuitive and easy to use, it's going to attract a different breed of people. You know, we're seeing more and more people who come to this space who are, you know, process engineers. They just looked at the way construction is working and they don't like it. And they say, well, why don't we try it this way? And that's a really cool, you know, that's a really cool place to be in our industry, to see that, to bring in different thinkers, because construction is not a very sexy industry. You know what I mean? Like we're pretty far behind on adopting technology compared to all the other industries that are out there. You know, agriculture smokes us, and we got to be better.
Isn't that funny that we're behind agriculture? I mean, here we live and breathe in the houses, but the cattle and the farms have more than we have, better technology than we have to produce.
It's nuts.
Yeah, it definitely is nuts. And yeah, I put up there Howick and FrameCAD and some of the other machine makers. I mean, they're becoming so advanced in what they can do and the information it can process. You know, David, in your industry, because it's a hot topic, you know, even at ClarkDietrich, is AI starting to play a role within your company?
Yeah, we have some AI and machine, you know, in-house machine learning is a big part of AI, right? Like inefficiencies in your own process. How do you get that better? That adoption, which I think works so well with just about everything in industrialized construction or offsite, whatever you prefer to call it, is that like there's a huge, you know, there's some real synergy with the Kaizen approach, right? Or lean manufacturing and what's it like, the Six Sigma type thing, right? Always trying to find a way, the Toyota way, always trying to do things something better, incremental or 2% daily improvement. You know, I love that kind of stuff. It's a great mantra for your, you know, personal life and your professional life and like how you do it, but it's cool to see it be embraced as a whole. And it has the common goal of everyone being safer and more efficient in what they're doing.
Do you see cold form steel being better suited for a particular type of project, whether it's single family or multifamily?
Yeah, we are great for mid-rise construction. So, 6 to 9 stories or 6 to 11 stories, I think is, that's a really good sweet spot. So that covers everything in multifamily. We've heard the push for, years now. If you've read one article about our industry or 100, you've heard at some point the idea about tackling affordable housing. And I recently heard some people kind of change the mantra of that from affordable to attainable housing. And I like that idea. That is, let's bring everyone into that type of, of thinking. What we really need is we need as much multifamily and single family homes built as possible. And
Yeah.
I love to see steel frame be incorporated in that. It's tried many times in the past. And, I think that it's, I'm gonna say something funny. One thing I've always heard in our industry is I run into a lot of people what I call by-godders. Are you familiar with the by-godder, David?
By God, I am not.
Okay, you might have been a by-godder at some point or about some subject in your life, or there's at least anyone who's watching. There's probably a by-godder in your office, and the by-godder is the guy who's always like, you bring him something new and innovative, like maybe just offsite, practices. Well, by God, in my day we did it this way, and by God, this is how we're. You get that. Okay. And what we're talking about is not witchcraft. Steel framing is not something that's just so, you need some type of degree to use. It's just a different way of doing it. And I think that, our industry needs something different. And, and housing specifically needs something different. It needs something that is going to be, it's a sustainable product. It's a strong product and, and fire resistant. That's something that is, constantly, I feel like, you have to account for it in multifamily construction, but somehow wood still gets a pass on that. And, it definitely doesn't make it any easier to use wood. And so you should, there's no reason to not consider a product that could make that a little bit more achievable.
No, for sure. Steel versus wood, some would say in the green net zero space is, wood wins. What is your thoughts on that? Can you achieve the same level of LEED certification or net zero certification? It really comes down to those thermal breaks. How do you get the thermal breaks in it?
Yeah, the thermal breaks, we actually worked on a product that we have introduced not too long ago that it's a continuous insulation channel, and we come with our own proprietary fasteners that has a sleeve on there to help tackle the thermal bridge, right? Or the thermal break. That's the one thing everyone constantly has to embrace or consider when you're utilizing steel framing. Right. And we accept and acknowledge that as a manufacturer. What was the other question? You had something else that you mentioned right before that was related to that.
Well, it was more just the difference between wood and steel when it comes to energy efficiency, LEED certification.
Oh yeah,
right?
The LEED certification. Sorry, yeah. There's one of the things we've worked on tremendously. You flashed the page a little while ago. Is we worked with a brand called Ecomedes, and basically it's like we created a tool for all of our product catalogs so that if I'm looking towards something and want to know the sustainability of it, it's an easy way to shop through a catalog of products and say, all right, here's every bit of sustainability information that related to that, to the product that I'm considering using. And I think that type of transparency is something that the industry is going to continue to lean towards. And it's going to really, I think that and systems, incorporating your products and materials into a system, or, like here's my rough opening system, or here's my continuous insulation system. Those type of things are going to be something that the next generation of designers is going to be heavily dependent on, right? You're going to have to check these boxes of being able to do this and that, right?
Yeah, and then just even while you're talking, looking at your site, I mean, there's so many videos on it for guys like me that don't want to read, right? There's a lot of videos, or you can get into the documents and the white papers and everything else that's on the website.
Yeah.
Well, let's wrap this up with some offsite stuff. Okay. We're seeing a lot more manufacturers come online across the country and around the world that are starting to use cold form steel versus wood for a number of reasons. One being automation. Steel's square, straight, right? Which is tough when you're trying to do fully automated factories, or you have to up your lumber that you're buying to a significantly different level for the machines to operate efficiently. So what are you seeing on the shift on your side? Are you seeing a lot more offsite manufacturers, panel, modular, whatever, moving towards steel?
Yeah, and there's a bunch of panelized prefab guys that we work with across the country, and the craziest thing is that the majority of them have all made their own framing tables, right? Just carbon steel welded framing tables that are not mobile or not stationary, very low tech in terms of automation, but it helps them get the repeatable part of their jobs done, right? Frame this wall, this panel, this size, this many openings in it, and be consistent about it, versus trying to do that in the field, right?
Absolutely. David, what haven't we talked about? Did I leave anything out that we should be discussing?
Nothing that I can think of. I mean,
come on, I'm not that good.
You're actually really good. In fact, I have to brag on you for a minute. I love your show. And for any of you watching, if this is your first time watching Dave Cooper, I would challenge you, go back to YouTube, because just like Dave said a little while ago, we're more of a generation of viewers than readers, and that's okay. But I'll give you a personal example of how you helped me.
Okay.
You did a plant tour on Tovi or Mod Logic, and they had a bunch of Howitt machines, and the main guy that you're interviewing there was Russ Wills, and I ran into Russ Wills at a trade show and got to talk to him, and I had such an elevated level of conversation because I felt like a lot of the questions I probably would have had for him running into the first time were already answered by your show, and instead we got to jump right into this area of just comfortability, talking about those things. And I love that about our industry. There's this type of, you've heard the saying, the high tide raises all ships. We need more of that. We need more of people sharing, building it up, and then making this, an easier topic to broach and talk about. So,
well, thank you for that. It's always good to hear, how people are being helped by this. And we said it all the time, to include yourself, David. Everybody should be out there doing videos talking about what they do for that very reason, especially if you're in sales and business development, because the bottom line is this: you can go from the first meeting, which is the awkward introduction, hi, this is who I am, to I already know a lot about you. I like what I've saw so far. Let's jump into this. You can go from the first meeting to the third or fourth meeting, the first meeting, just because of the videos that we do. So not that I need everybody taking my job of what I do, but I think if you want to be a leader and a thought leader within your space, it makes a whole lot of sense. So David, man, I appreciate it. You're going to be at World of Modular, right?
I am. Come find me, please. I don't have a booth this year. I'm just going to be walking the floor. But if you see me and you want to just confront me about everything you heard today because you don't like wood or you're not a believer, I'm okay with that. All right. I will buy you a beer or coffee depending on the time of day, and we can talk it out. So
I love it. I love it. Well, listen, we will be at World of Modular, so I'm looking forward to seeing everybody out there. We're going to have some events and have some fun, and hopefully we're going to run into you and pretty much every other top industry leader that's in this space, especially in the modular space, should be there. So if you're not familiar with ClarkDietrich and David Chiles, I hope this helps everybody else out there. I have known David for a couple of years now. We run into each other. We talk all the time. And you guys have a great name in this industry, and everybody seems to really appreciate you and everything that you do, to include your steel thing at your booth where you can lift it over your head. You're the strongest guy I've ever seen in my life.
Let's go.
All right, everybody. Listen, thank you for watching today. And guess what? It is only Monday. You still have 4.5 days to keep building it better. That's right. So now that my show is almost over, you can get back to doing what we all do best, and that's trying to find better ways to build. Let's make it more sustainable. Let's make it healthier. Let's make it affordable, or attainable is the new word I'm hearing from David today.
Love it.
I'm Dave Cooper. We'll see you this Wednesday. David, don't go anywhere. The rest of you, make sure you thank these supporting members as well, because we can't do this without any of them. Thanks for watching. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.